My mother had always said that everything I ever had in this life came down to luck. When I ranked first in my grade, she said, "Wow, you guessed right again." When I won a gold medal in competition, she said, "The judges must have made a mistake." When I got into one of the best universities in the country, she went around telling everyone, "That kid doesn't have any real ability. She just happens to be lucky." So on the first day of freshman year, she tossed me a book of scratch-off lottery tickets. "Since your luck is supposedly so great," she said, "you might as well let it pay your living expenses too. One book per semester. Whatever you win is what you get. And just so you can't call me crying that you're broke, I'm blocking you now. I'll add you back next semester." Then she hung up, no matter how desperately I begged on the other end of the phone, and blocked every possible way I had to reach her. I was so stunned I couldn't even cry. From then on, all I could do was scratch 2 tickets a day. On lucky days, I might win $20 or $50. Most days, I got nothing. I stayed alive by secretly picking expired snacks out of my roommate's trash. By the last week of the semester, I had severe anemia. I was dizzy all the time, weak to the bone, and when I finally used the last of my strength to scratch the final ticket from that book, I laughed. My mother had been right about one thing. My luck really was good. By then I was so hungry that my vision doubled. Bright spots swam in front of my eyes. The scratch-offs my mother had given me, each one with a face value of $20, felt like the countdown clock on my life, and there was only one ticket left. The $30 I'd won before that had already been stretched as far as humanly possible. I lived on plain rolls, pickled vegetables, and hot water, and even that barely lasted 2 weeks. My stomach felt like an invisible hand was squeezing it all day and all night, twisting until it cramped. Still clinging to the last shred of hope, I tried calling my mother again. Reality answered with another bucket of ice water. I was still blocked. Desperate, I borrowed a phone from a classmate I barely knew and called her from that number instead. "Mom." Before I could say anything else, her sharp, bitter voice came through the line. "If I remember right, you've still got one scratch-off left, don't you? Don't come whining to me about money. I'm not buying it. If you were able to get into college and win scholarships on luck, then use luck again." She hung up so hard it felt like the sound slapped me across the face. When I called back, her phone was already off. I stared down at the final ticket in my hand. It suddenly felt heavy, like a stone. I was afraid to scratch it. Afraid it would be another loser. When school started, I still looked healthy enough. Now I was skin and bones. I was 5'5" and weighed barely 80 pounds. My skin was pale enough to show bluish veins underneath. There wasn't a trace of color in my face. When I got back to the dorm room and found it empty, I staggered toward the trash can out of habit, checking to see whether my roommates had thrown out anything edible, anything expired but not totally rotten, anything I could pick up and swallow without getting sick. That was how I'd spent most of the semester. The first time I was caught digging through the trash, the dorm door opened behind me. "Seriously, Zoe? You're doing that again," my roommate Lauren said in disgust. "That's so gross." I flushed instantly and yanked my hand back like the trash can had burned me. Her gaze swept over the scratch-off tickets on my desk, and sudden understanding flashed in her eyes, followed immediately by contempt. "I can't believe you. Your gambling problem is that bad? You'd rather starve than stop buying those things? If you're really that addicted, at least go find some guy to buy you dinner or something. Whatever. Rooming with someone like you is just my bad luck." She looked down at the slice of cake in her hand, took one last bite, then tossed the rest into the trash and walked back out. I was starving so badly my head buzzed. I had no energy left to wonder whether she'd meant it as charity or humiliation. The second she left, I lunged forward like an animal, snatched the half-eaten cake out of the trash, and stuffed it into my mouth. As I ate, hot tears dropped one by one, mixing into the crumbs. I was humiliated beyond words. I couldn't even blame her for thinking what she did. She didn't know that before school started, my mother had printed out flyers with my picture on them and handed them to every small business near campus, telling them not to hire me for part-time work. She had cut off every path I had. "Isn't she lucky?" my mother had said. "Then let luck feed her." I had explained it countless times. I didn't get my awards through luck. Every honor I'd earned, I had fought for little by little, one step at a time. But my mother never believed me. In her eyes, everything I had ever achieved could be erased by 2 light, careless words. Good luck. The last bite of cake settled in my stomach, and the dizziness eased just a little. I turned back toward that final scratch-off ticket. At last, I made up my mind and started scraping away the silver coating with trembling fingers. As each layer peeled back, my heart sank lower. By the time I reached the last row, I had already stopped hoping. Prize amount, $20. Something inside me went still. That meant that until next semester, until my mother decided to throw me another book of tickets like scraps to a stray dog, I had exactly $20 left to survive on. Clutching the ticket, I walked out of the dorm to redeem it at the lottery counter near the campus gate. I had barely stepped out of the building when I heard a stern voice behind me. "Zoe Parker." I turned and saw my academic advisor, Professor Bennett. The second he noticed the scratch-off ticket in my hand, the disappointment on his face deepened. "Someone told me, and I didn't want to believe it," he said. "You got into this university with one of the top scores in the state. How did you end up addicted to this kind of shortcut nonsense? Do you have any idea what your grades look like now? They're practically in free fall. I'm extremely disappointed in you." He went on for several minutes under the hot afternoon sun. "This conversation is a warning. If you keep going like this, I'll have no choice but to recommend disciplinary action. If things get worse, you could even be dismissed." By then, the little energy from that piece of cake had almost run out. My body started swaying. "Zoe?" His expression shifted instantly from anger to alarm. "Are you all right?" When he saw how pale I was and how my hands shook uncontrollably, he sighed. "Come with me. I'm taking you to the cafeteria. And from now on, stop wasting your meal money on lottery tickets. There is no such thing as food falling from the sky." I didn't refuse. At that point, anyone willing to give me a meal was my savior. My lifeline. Pride meant nothing when survival was at stake. The truth was, the whole semester, I hadn't been able to afford actual cafeteria meals. I never stood in line at the hot food counters. I bought plain bread and drank free hot water. I didn't have the strength to stay awake in class. I couldn't focus. The words on the board swam before my eyes like insects. My grades had collapsed. The pride I'd once had in myself had shattered long ago. After I wolfed down a full meal, I felt human again. My legs didn't shake as much. My mind cleared. I thanked Professor Bennett and turned to leave. He frowned. Where are you going? I held up the wrinkled ticket in my hand. To redeem it. Otherwise, I won't have anything to eat. Zoe, he snapped, furious. Did you already forget everything I just said? Or have you made up your mind to fight me until you're thrown out of school? I shouldn't have bought you that meal. I should have let you starve a little longer so you'd understand how serious this is. Give me the ticket. Cut your losses now. He held out his hand, his tone broking no argument. I quickly hid the ticket behind my back. Professor Bennett, I really can't. I have my reasons. He slammed a hand against the table. You are beyond saving. I'm telling you right now, if you don't hand it over, I'll report you as soon as I get back. You'll be publicly reprimanded and formally disciplined. I lowered my head. My nails dug into my palm. After a long internal struggle, I bowed to him. I'm sorry. I really can't give it to you. Then I turned and ran, ignoring him calling after me, and sprinted all the way to the redemption booth. The middle-aged woman behind the counter took the ticket from me, rolled her eyes, and muttered, kids these days. Wasting their parents' hard-earned money like this. Bitterness flooded my chest. If I told her the truth, that this scratch-off was my mother's idea of a semester's living expenses, the only reason I was still alive, she'd probably think I was either lying or insane. Payment code, she said impatiently, holding up her phone. I took out my battered old phone. Its screen cracked in several places, and was about to pull up the code when I suddenly changed my mind. I'm not redeeming it, I heard myself say. I want to exchange it for a new ticket. She gave me a dramatic eye roll, tore off a fresh $20 scratcher, and dropped it in front of me. Hopeless. How does a university like this admit students like you? I'd heard words like that too many times already. From roommates, from strangers, from people who didn't know anything. By then, they didn't even sting anymore. I took the new ticket, thanked her quietly, and left without scratching it right there. I had only taken a few steps when my phone rang. The name on the screen made me freeze. Mom. For a second, I simply stared. That number felt so distant and unfamiliar, like something from a past life. I answered just before the call disconnected. Hello. My mother's mocking voice came through immediately. I thought you were too proud to answer my call. So, you finished those scratch-offs I gave you at the start of the semester, didn't you? How much did the last one win? 20. The sarcasm in her voice sharpened. Well then, guess you really are lucky. Amazing you didn't starve to death. I finally snapped. Do you even know how I survived this semester? I shouted into the phone. I lived off my roommate's leftovers and food I pulled out of the trash. And today, if my advisor hadn't taken pity on me and bought me one meal, I probably would have collapsed and ended up in the hospital. I thought maybe hearing that would shake her. Instead, she laughed coldly. So what? Are you trying to brag that your luck got you kind roommates and a kind advisor too? Zoe Parker, I'm trying to teach you not to rely on luck and chance. If luck got you into college, then surely luck can help you stay fed. Tears burst out of me. I didn't get into this university through luck. I screamed. I didn't win those competitions through luck either. I earned every one of those things through hard work. But my outburst only made her more impatient. Stop putting on a show. What hard work? I gave birth to you. You think I don't know what you're worth? Back when I was pregnant with you, I even fell on purpose a few times and still couldn't get rid of you. If that's not luck, what is? The blood in my body seemed to freeze. It was the first time she had ever said it to me that plainly, that cruelly. I had heard relatives whisper before that when my mother found out she was carrying a girl, she hadn't wanted to keep the baby. Back then, medical procedures weren't as easy or accessible as they were now, and she had been too scared to go through with it. So she had me anyway. Later, after complications, she lost the ability to have any more children. My father eventually divorced her, partly because they could not have another child. All the ugly pieces suddenly clicked into place. The anger and hurt that had been building in me for years finally exploded. If I'd known I'd grow up to live off scratch-off tickets like this, I shouted, shaking, do you think I would have chosen to be born? Oh, now you're talking back, she said with a sneer. Fine. Then next semester I'll just switch to $10 tickets instead. Since you're so lucky, that should save me money too. Then she hung up. I knew she had probably blocked me again. I walked back to my dorm in a daze. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the fresh ticket I had exchanged for. Finally, I gathered the courage to scratch it. First row. Nothing. Second row. Nothing. Third row. Nothing. By the last row, I had accepted defeat. I closed my eyes and scratched wildly. Then, after a long moment, I opened them again with trembling breath. 1. Prize amount, $5 million. For a second, I couldn't even understand what I was seeing. Then every emotion I had been holding inside, pain, rage, exhaustion, disbelief, crashed into one overwhelming wave. And above all of them, joy. The prize had to be claimed at the state lottery center. I didn't waste a second. I ran. Thankfully, the campus wasn't too far away. I had no money for a ride, so I walked the whole way, nearly 30 minutes, heart pounding the entire time. Even after the staff confirmed everything and the money hit my account, it still didn't feel real. I kept staring at the number on my bank app as tears ran down my face. Then I went to the most expensive restaurant in the city and ate until I felt sick. People passing by couldn't help staring at me. I must have looked like someone who had never seen food before, someone half-starved coming back from the edge. My mother had said it before, and now I almost wanted to laugh. She was right. My luck really was incredible. By the time I returned to the dorm that evening, my phone was ringing again. Zoe, honey, did you win something? That syrupy nickname made goosebumps crawl over my skin. I couldn't even remember the last time she'd called me by my childhood name. When I got into college, she hadn't even sounded pleased. What prize? I said flatly. I have no idea what you're talking about. My mother immediately grew agitated. Zoe Parker, don't push me too far. I saw the news. They said someone in the city hit the scratch-off jackpot today, and when they showed the winner from behind, I knew it was you. I'd recognize you even if you turned to ash. Only then did I realize my mistake. I'd been so overwhelmed by hunger and excitement that I had rushed straight to claim the prize without thinking to disguise myself well enough to avoid being recognized. You've got the wrong person, I said, and hung up. When she kept calling, I let it ring. Then I blocked her. I thought that would quiet things down. It didn't. Early the next morning, Lauren was violently shaking my bed. Zoe, get up. Something huge happened. Her next sentence woke me faster than any alarm ever could. Your mother is on the roof of the science building saying she wants to see you. She's threatening to jump if you don't come. All the sleep drained from my body. I leaped out of bed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, hair a mess, and ran. By the time I got there, a crowd had already gathered. On the rooftop, my mother stood near the edge like a madwoman, yelling for all of campus to hear. I want to expose my daughter, Zoe Parker, a student at this university. She got in by luck, she's addicted to gambling, and now that she's won the jackpot, she wants to cut ties with her own mother. Does someone like that deserve to study at a top university? It was still early in the morning, but students had already started gathering from every direction, drawn by the commotion. Some cursed me. Some envied me. Most were simply excited to watch the spectacle. I looked up at my mother's frenzied figure against the sky. I opened my mouth to tell her to calm down. Then I stopped. If she wanted to say I was a gambler, then this time I decided I would gamble too. I would bet that she didn't dare jump. So I turned around and walked away. Back in the dorm, I calmly sat down and filled out an application for an international academic exchange program. I won the bet. My mother loved her own life too much to throw it away. After screaming for a long time and realizing I wasn't coming, she eventually climbed down. The school, wanting to avoid an even bigger incident, called me in for a private meeting. But once Professor Bennett heard that my scratch-off tickets had been my mother's substitute for living expenses, even he fell silent for a long time. In the end, he promised he would stop interfering in that matter and said the school would tighten campus security so outsiders couldn't enter so easily again. The study abroad application wasn't especially hard. Because my entrance scores had been strong, I was approved for one of the spots. Professor Bennett urged me to hurry and apply for a passport. I didn't hesitate. I gathered my documents and went straight to the office. The clerk took my ID, typed for a while, then frowned at the screen. I watched the people around me finish their applications and leave. A strange unease crept over me. Finally, the clerk looked up apologetically. Miss Parker, I'm sorry. Your application can't be processed right now. We found that a civil complaint has been filed under your name. Under current regulations, your international travel documents can't move forward until that issue is addressed. I stared at her, confused, then pulled out my phone. Buried among the blocked messages was a notification from a legal number I didn't recognize. I opened it. My mother had sued me. Reason: refusal to fulfill support obligations toward a parent. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Then I clenched my jaw. If she insisted on going this far, then fine. I would answer the lawsuit. And I would finally get a real ending to this mother-daughter relationship. The court date was set for a week later. During that week, my mother bombarded me with messages from one strange number after another. What does a college student need that much money for? I only have one child. If you give it to me, I'm still just keeping it safe for you. Be good and hand it over. I'll withdraw the lawsuit. You're still a student. Going to court won't look good for you. I didn't answer a single message. I read them, deleted them, blocked the numbers, and moved on. Then I hired one of the best attorneys in the city. If my mother wanted a fight, she was going to get one. On the day of the hearing, she looked surprised the moment she saw my lawyer sitting beside me. Then her face twisted with rage. Zoe Parker, you ungrateful little monster. You actually spent that much money on a lawyer just to fight your own mother. I didn't bother answering. With money in my account, why would I waste my breath arguing with her myself? The moment the hearing began, my mother launched into her performance. I want justice, she cried dramatically. I raised my daughter all by myself. Now she's won a huge prize and wants to abandon me. The winning ticket was bought with my money. I have the purchase record. Therefore, I demand that Zoe Parker return the full $5 million and pay me support as her parent. My lawyer adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly. First, my client is still a full-time student with no independent source of income. The plaintiff has not yet reached retirement age and has not lost the ability to work, so my client has no current legal obligation to provide support. Second, the plaintiff's behavior toward my client before the prize was one raises serious concerns. Providing a single book of scratch-off tickets as an entire semester's living expenses is not normal parental support. It is neglect. Then I spoke. The ticket that won the $5 million was not from the book my mother gave me. My mother's eyes widened. For a long second, she just stared at me. Then her face turned red. That's impossible, she stammered. You're lying. You're saying that on purpose, because you don't want to give me the money. I looked at my lawyer. He nodded and submitted our evidence. We had the full redemption records from the original book of tickets my mother gave me at the start of the semester. After reviewing the evidence, the judge looked up. We have verified the codes. The defense's records are authentic. The total cost of the ticket book purchased by the plaintiff was $500. The total prize value redeemed from that book was approximately $265. The judge paused, visibly unsettled. You intended for the defendant to live an entire semester on roughly $265? My mother panicked. She's lucky. Didn't she win $5 million? Maybe you're all mistaken. The courtroom shifted restlessly. My attorney turned to me with something like pity in his eyes. Then the judge cleared his throat and continued. We also verified the redemption records. The $5 million prize did not come from the book of tickets originally given by the plaintiff. And even if it had, the plaintiff previously stated that whatever prize amount the defendant scraped off would belong to her. The court sees no legal basis for reclaiming it. My mother still wouldn't stop. She's never worked a day in her life. It's not safe for a girl her age to have that much money. I cut her off with a calm smile. I'm already an adult. And besides, Mom, you said yourself that I'm lucky. Did you forget? The ruling was immediate. I won. All of my mother's claims were rejected. The judge didn't even require me to pay her back for the original ticket book because it had been clearly established as the only living expenses she provided me that semester. I thought that after losing so thoroughly, my mother would finally give up on my money. I was wrong. She still had lower depths left to sink to. A few days later, while I was preparing to resubmit my passport application, Professor Bennett called in a rush. Zoe, your mother is at the administration office causing another scene. You need to come back right away. My heart dropped. I set everything down and hurried back to campus. Before I even reached the building, I could already hear her shrill voice from inside. You call yourselves one of the top universities in the country? And this is the kind of student you accept? I already told you, Zoe Parker only got in because of luck. It had nothing to do with hard work. She just happened to get test questions she knew. And now she's rich and heartless. If you won't deal with her, then what if she goes overseas one day and becomes some kind of traitor? I couldn't take another second. I shoved the office door open. Mom, enough. For the first time, she went quiet. Only for a moment. Then a smug expression spread across her face, like she finally had me cornered. I knew you'd come. I may have lost the case, but blood is blood. A child who earns money should give it to her parents. That's just common sense. If you don't, then I'll sever our mother-daughter relationship. Let's see who you'll have to rely on after that. I almost laughed. What exactly had she ever been for me to rely on? But on the surface, I pretended to hesitate. After a beat, I asked, how much do you want? Her eyes lit up instantly. She raised one finger. For a second, I thought maybe her appetite had finally gotten smaller. Then she said, you keep 10,000. Give me the rest. Even Professor Bennett, who had been holding himself back until then, couldn't stay quiet. Ma'am, I was already furious when you kept insisting that Zoe's achievements came from luck. But this is outrageous. She won $5 million, and you want her to keep only 10,000? Do you know this student barely ate proper meals all semester? She was starving. My mother rolled her eyes at him. I gave birth to her. I know her better than anyone. If I let her keep 10,000, that's already me being generous. With money like that, she'll just buy more scratch-offs anyway. Maybe she'll win again. I didn't even get angry. I just glanced at Professor Bennett, signaling him not to interfere. Then I looked back at my mother. I only asked how much you wanted. Wanting something doesn't mean you're getting it. The smile fell off her face. Realizing she'd been played, she lunged at me, one hand raised, nails out like claws, aiming straight for my face. But the security guards who had already been waiting at the door rushed in and dragged her away. I exhaled slowly. I needed to get my passport finished as fast as possible. Once I left the country, no matter how crazily she acted, it would no longer be able to touch my life the same way. My mother tried to appeal, but her request was denied. That gave me enough time to finish all my passport paperwork. The moment everything was finally approved, I bought the nearest flight out. On the day I went to the airport, I left early on purpose. It still wasn't early enough. Somehow, she found out. I had barely reached the security checkpoint when she charged over and blocked the entrance, hands on her hips, voice already rising for the whole terminal to hear. Zoe Parker, you've really grown wings, haven't you? Sneaking off overseas behind my back. She planted herself directly in the way of other passengers. Was it easy for me to raise you alone? I gave birth to you, fed you, took care of you, and now that you've made money you want to abandon me? You even refuse to support your own mother. What kind of daughter does that? As she shouted, she actually managed to squeeze a few tears out. Because some people waiting nearby had time to spare, they started whispering. So she raised her alone and now the daughter wants to dump her after getting rich? That's cold. Maybe we shouldn't jump to conclusions. The girl looks half dead, not rich. The mom looks like she's been eating just fine. The crowd thickened. The situation got messy fast. Soon airport security approached. Ma'am, one of the officers said carefully, if you're not boarding, please step aside to handle your personal matters. You're delaying other passengers. I glanced at my mother and said flatly, I'm trying to board. She's the one preventing everyone else from getting through. The second she heard that, she threw herself onto the floor like a child and began kicking and rolling. Look at the daughter I raised. She wants security to drag me away. I have high blood pressure. If I die right here, it'll be exactly what this ungrateful girl wants. Her performance was so dramatic that even the officers looked helpless. Nobody dared lay a hand on her. I checked the time and let out a quiet breath. I wasn't making that flight. So I turned around, pulled my suitcase behind me, and left. In the taxi back, my phone pushed a local news alert. I clicked it open and nearly laughed. The article was about my mother's scene at the airport. The whole thing was so bizarre, and there had been so many bystanders filming, that the story had already started spreading online. The comments were divided, but most people believed my mother. They decided I was some rich, heartless daughter who wanted to cut off the single mother who had raised her. I still don't know who taught her how to livestream, but by that afternoon a live video titled A Mother's Honest Words After the Airport Incident was trending locally. When I clicked in, she had a face filter on that made her look older and more worn down than she really was. My daughter has always loved shortcuts, she said tearfully to the camera. She got into a top school through luck and hit the jackpot through luck too. But what's the point of money and education if you don't respect your parents? A child who refuses to care for her mother is a disgrace to society. We even ended up in court because of it. All I wanted was for her to take care of me when I'm old. Was that so wrong? She carefully left out certain details, of course. But people online weren't all fools. Before long, questions started popping up in the comments. Wait, are you saying someone can get into that university through luck? Exactly. Since when can you randomly luck your way into one of the toughest schools in the country? You mean she got questions she knew? Or maybe she knew the material because she studied it. My mother visibly panicked. Yes, the exam just happened to include things she knew. Isn't that luck? That only made the comments explode harder. Lady, have you considered that maybe she knew all the questions because she knew all the material? I've never heard anyone say someone got into a school like that by luck. You're lying. Then people who actually knew me started showing up. I was her classmate in high school. She was top 10 in our grade every single month. I'm one of her college classmates. I heard the story. Her mom only gave her a book of scratch-offs as living expenses for the whole semester, then started demanding money after she won. It's insane. My mother was one mouth against tens of thousands. She couldn't keep up. Within minutes, she ended the stream. The public mood shifted just as fast. Suddenly, everyone was mocking the absurdity of using scratch-off tickets as a child's living expenses. For the first time in a long while, the tide turned in my favor. That evening, she borrowed someone else's phone and called me. Zoe, you have to understand your mother, she said in a much softer voice. It wasn't easy raising you alone. I was always afraid you'd leave me the way your father did. Maybe the way I handled things was wrong, but all these years, I didn't let you starve to death, did I? Letting strangers attack me like this isn't very nice either. I let out a short laugh. Mom, I'm not going to abandon you. But what you asked for before, leaving me with only $10,000, is impossible. Studying abroad costs a lot. Still, I can give you living expenses every month. As long as you promise not to interfere with my education again. The second she heard that, excitement rushed into her voice. Of course. No problem. Every month I need at least. I hung up before she could finish. Then I bought another ticket. This time, for the sake of money, she actually kept her promise. She didn't cause me any more trouble before I finally landed in the United States. On the first month's agreed payment date, she called me first thing in the morning back home. Zoe, it's time to send my living expenses, isn't it? I haven't even given you my bank information yet. Because of the time difference, it was already late at night where I was. Half asleep, I yawned and said lazily, I didn't forget. I already left it in the mailbox outside your house. The one where the newspaper goes. She muttered something and hung up. I didn't wait around for her reaction. I turned my phone off and went back to sleep. When I turned it on the next day, it vibrated nonstop for almost 10 minutes. Missed calls. Angry texts. Zoe Parker, where's the money? What do you mean there's a book of scratch-off tickets in the mailbox? I knew it. You're getting revenge on me, aren't you? Don't ever come back if that's how you're going to be. When you do come back, I'll beat you to death, you ungrateful girl. Zoe, how about this? Just give me the money you spent buying the scratch-offs instead? I deleted everything with one tap. Compared to the single book she had given me for an entire semester, my sending her one book a month was already more mercy than she deserved. For a long while after that, I ignored every unfamiliar number from back home and focused on my classes abroad. Every month, right on time, I had someone place one carefully chosen book of scratch-off tickets into her mailbox. And yes, I chose them carefully. Scratch-off patterns weren't completely random. After studying them for a while, I learned how to avoid the batches that still had major prizes remaining. The books I sent her would never turn her into another miracle story. Then one afternoon, while I was studying in the classroom, my advisor abroad pushed the door open. Zoe, we received a message from your school back home. They say your mother is critically ill and wants to see you one last time. When are you planning to return? For a while, I just sat there staring at him. He didn't know any details. Neither did the message. In the end, after thinking it through again and again, I took leave and flew back. The moment I pushed open the door to the house, I knew something was wrong. The air felt off. I had barely stepped inside and looked around when a huge man suddenly lunged out from nowhere and wrapped his arms around me. Heh, he laughed. An educated girl who's lived overseas really is something else. I struggled violently. Then my mother came out of the bedroom, looking far too pleased with herself for someone who was supposedly on the verge of death. Zoe Parker, since you've become so disobedient, then as your mother it's my duty to find you a proper husband and teach you some manners. Parents decide these things. I say you're marrying Big Dan, then you're marrying Big Dan. He has more land than anyone back in my hometown, and his wife just died. You should be grateful. Then she turned to the man. Big Dan, we agreed, right? Once you marry her, her money comes to me for retirement. And you still owe me $100,000 as a bride price. A chill ran through me. I had known my mother was cruel. I had not known she was capable of pretending to be dying just to trick me back into the country and sell me off to some widower from her hometown. In that instant, something inside me hardened. During my time in the US after regaining my health, I had also started taking self-defense classes. Living alone in a foreign country had made me cautious. So I drove my elbow hard into Big Dan's stomach. The second he bent over in pain, I kicked him sharply between the legs. He yelped and stumbled backward, eyes wide with fear. Mrs. Parker, your daughter's too fierce. There's no way she'd ever obediently bear me children. Forget it. Find someone else. Then he scrambled for the door and ran. My mother cursed after him until she ran out of breath. Then she turned back to me and raised her hand, clearly wanting to hit me. But after what she had just seen, she hesitated. I looked at her and smiled coldly. Don't bother. He won't get far. I already called the police before I came. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I guessed you might pull something like this. If I'd guessed wrong, maybe I'd just get scolded for wasting their time. Luckily, I guessed right. As if on cue, sirens sounded outside. Big Dan, who had tried to escape, was soon brought back in by 2 officers. My mother instantly panicked. Officers, this is all a misunderstanding. He's just an old family friend. I invited him over, that's all. This crazy girl called the police for no reason. I didn't waste time arguing. I took out my phone and played the audio I had recorded in my pocket the moment I entered the house. When my mother tried to rush me to grab it, one of the officers pinned her arms behind her back. The whole conversation played clearly. After it ended, I looked at the officers calmly. My mother conspired with someone else in order to control me and take my money. I want to pursue this matter fully. My mother went wild. You heartless little thing. I should have gotten rid of you before you were born. I watched the police lead her away and said quietly, too bad you didn't. Because, as you always said, I'm lucky. This time, her own words had truly become prophecy. Because no actual physical harm had been completed, my mother was only detained for a short time. But the damage to her reputation was worse than any punishment. After Big Dan was released, he hated her too. He went back to their hometown and told everyone what had happened. After that, he had too much shame to return openly to the village for a long while. As for me, I blocked my mother again. Still, every month, the scratch-off tickets kept arriving in her mailbox right on schedule. I didn't worry about her suddenly hitting some life-changing jackpot. Like I said, I chose those books myself. The truly dramatic twist was that my mother eventually became exactly what she had pretended to be when she tricked me home. Not long after, she really did get sick. A brain hemorrhage. She survived, but not in any way that let her return to the old life she had fought so viciously to control. She lost the ability to care for herself. For the rest of her life, she would be confined to a bed. I didn't have the heart to leave her on the street. But I didn't have the heart to play devoted daughter either. So I placed her in the cheapest nursing home I could find, the kind with one caregiver watching over dozens of patients at once, where the level of care was exactly what you would expect. Maybe some people would call that cruel. But compared to the way she had fed me a semester's worth of lottery tickets and called it parenting, I thought it was more than fair. I went back overseas and finished my studies. 3 years later, when I finally returned home for good, the city looked both familiar and new. The air smelled the same, the streets were the same, but I was not. For so many years, my mother had insisted that luck was the only thing I had ever possessed. She used that word to erase my effort, to diminish my intelligence, to explain away every medal, every exam score, every scholarship, every sleepless night. Luck. But the truth was, luck had never been the thing that carried me through. What carried me through was the stubborn refusal to die when someone wanted me gone. What carried me through was the humiliation of digging through garbage and still waking up the next day. What carried me through was surviving on almost nothing, winning when no one believed I deserved to, and leaving when everyone expected me to stay trapped. Yes, I had won $5 million from a scratch-off ticket. That part really was luck. But what I did after that, what I chose, what I protected, what I endured, what I escaped, that had nothing to do with luck at all. When I looked back on everything, I could finally admit it. My mother had been right only once. I really had been lucky. Lucky that in spite of everything, I had still made it out. Lucky that I had learned, at last, that blood alone means nothing. Lucky that after being raised in a house that called my strength luck and my pain a lesson, I had still become someone who could walk away. And as I stood there under the familiar sky of home, feeling lighter than I ever had before, I smiled to myself. For the first time in my life, the future no longer looked like something I had to survive. It looked like something that belonged to me.